There. Today is January 31st, 2024, and I am on the PCH and on the beach on the border of the Palisades and Malibu. In fact, let's see, you see it. Ah, where are you? That right there is the Getty Villa, as if that meant anything. So I've got news. The um, results of the MRI that I did on Monday night came back yesterday morning, and I sent it out to uh, uh, my my consulting group. I have three different friends who are doctors, and my sister, who's a dialysis nurse, and they all got back to me um, by last evening, and each one of them started out saying the same exact thing, which is this is good news. Um, So I want to preface everything that I say with cautious, with the words cautious optimism, um, and that the results are not as dramatic as I would have, and the results are not as dramatic as I would have liked. Um, but bottom line is uh, that the overall the cancer is shrinking, and not as much as I would like, but it's shrinking, and um, to the point where they've restaged my case. So initially, back in November, it was staged as T4N1 disease, which means that there were 4 lymph nodes in the mix, and they've and it's actually T4N1C. All that means is that there were 4 lymph nodes involved, and the lesion itself was essentially plowing into the colon wall so deeply that it was threatening nearby tissues and organs. Um, they've restaged it to T3B N1 disease, which means that it is now there's only 3 lymph nodes involved. All the other ones that were threatening are now not even a factor, and that um, where the lesion has actually shrunk back out of the colon wall. Um, so it's not threatening those nearby tissues anymore. Um, I say cautious optimism because while it's shrinking, it's also growing. It's spreading. It's doing what it does. You know, it's trying to take over as much territory as it can, but at the same time, it's being killed off on the fringes. And what's happened is it appears that now this may be just something that happens when you have two different MRI results being compared by two different radiologists. Um, there can be discrepancies in the numbers. So initially, the the lesion was said to be about 15 to 20 centimeters um, above the anus, right? And where the rectum turns into the anus. And what happened is, since November, it's actually moved further down, so that it's now only 5 centimeters above that conjunction, I think. Um, but the good news about that is the radiologist specifically said that it's not threatening, not currently threatening the sphincter or its whole complex of nerves and whatnot, which is, wonderful because that means that, my sphincter will still work. Um, so the cancer is shrinking. The the significance of this restaging, just in terms of pure numbers, means that uh, my chances of survival just went up 20%. The T4 disease is like 75% survival rate after 5 years, and this T3 uh, designation means that I'm now in the 95% um, percentile of survival after 5 years. So um, it's okay to just to start to think of being around longer. So there's that. Um, what this means for me, this is week 7 since I started this series of 6 infusions, 3 weeks apart. I've had 3, and my last one was last Thursday, about 6 days ago. My next one is in another 2.5 weeks or so. The fourth one. Each one of these infusions increases the octave of toxicity in your system. But in those 3 weeks, the first week it's overwhelming, the second week is more acclimating, the third week you start to feel normal, and you start to think that, oh yeah, this is easy, I could do it again, and then you're taken to the next level of toxicity, which means more sensitivity to all the side effects and whatnot, especially with this chemo, because it's got some pretty friggin' drastic side effects that I think if I wasn't as healthy as I am, could actually kill you. Um, from shock, if not anything else. Uh, the cold response is no fucking joke, folks. Example: this morning, I woke up with this overwhelming nausea, and um, that's a trigger. That means I've already gone through a couple of triggers to get to that point, and the next thing that after that is dry heaving, and that's where it gets dangerous. So, because all the muscles in your chest can seize up and cramp up, and you feel like you can't breathe, and yeah, it's pretty hellacious. But um, luckily, I knew exactly what it was. It was because the air in the van was cool. It wasn't cold; it was just cool, right? And I'd been breathing enough of it so that it caused the triggers, caused me to go through the triggers. Luckily, the nausea woke me up before I woke up screaming. So and the solution is really simple. I mean, you start the oming, of course, to do the vagus nerve thing. And isn't it wonderful to know that you can, if you feel that oming or humming can stop nausea? I mean, spread that word, would you? Um, but the more immediate thing is to warm the air before you breathe it. So I put on a mask, and then sat around waiting till the sun came up and warmed the air enough around me to be able to take the mask off. And I've got to do the same thing with water, because if like that water right there is even the wetness in this sand right here could cause that same cold response to happen. That water right there, man, I don't know what would happen. I don't even want to fucking find out. I've don't even want to go there. Um, so anyway, um, what's going to happen is I'm going to do my level-headed best to make the most out of the levels of toxicity that these chemo drugs are provide. This cocktail of chemo drugs are providing. Um, so as I said, the third week of after the infusion, you start to feel normal. It's because the level of toxicity has started to drop, has waned. It's actually at its weakest point in the cycle. But by odd, just happenstance or whatever, the universal guidance, I was supposed to initially be taking the capecitabine pills at this, start the 14-day cycle of taking them the day that I start the infusions. But the first two infusions were so rough, I had to extend the period after you take the pills to just not to have my 7 days off where my organs have a chance to rest and clear before starting up again. I had to extend that period for some time, and so that now I I start the capecitabine pills 14 days, and it's the last 2 weeks of it's the weakest part of the infusion cycle. So I reached the peak toxicity of the capecitabine the day of the infusion, and then I stopped taking them for that week. So that's just how it ended up, and uh, I mentioned this to the doctor, and he was like, "That's not how I prescribed it." But there isn't nobody's actually done any study into the effectiveness of what you're talking about. Of when how you overlap those two drugs. Um, so we're in new territory. We'll see. But I feel that the fact that as the infusion drug wanes, the capecitabine peaks. That what this does is it keeps a constant pressure on the cancer cells. So the goal of this whole um, treatment is to um, create cell collapse, um, what's called programmed cell destruction. Uh, um, or cell suicide. There's a word for it. It's called apoptosis. Apoptosis, um, where a cell finally decides that it's not being useful and it kills itself. Essentially, it implodes. And if you stress cancer cells enough, that's exactly what they just kill themselves. And um, so that's so the more stress you can bring to bear on cancer cells, the better. So that's everything that I'm doing is trying to take advantage of that. So one of the things that I'm doing, what I've been doing is in those 7 days when I'm not doing the capecitabine, because when I take the capecitabine, I have to eat something. I try to fast as much as I can. So I fast the first 48 hours after the infusion. And this time, I then ate for 36 hours. And then, because on Monday I had the MRI, I fasted for another 24 hours. And then yesterday I ate. And today I'm doing another 24-hour fast. And tomorrow I start the capecitabine pills again. And so, you know, not having a schedule, hitting this thing any way that it can expect, you know, Uh, so intermittent fasting, using that when I can. That's one way to put enough stress on this thing. I posted something yesterday that explains what I was doing with sound therapy to vibrate the the cells using the 100,000 to 300,000 hertz frequencies, creating a binaural that puts stress on those two different frequencies, create a stress in the cell that has actually been documented. You can go on YouTube and watch a TED talk published in 2014 about this, where um, they just show you the introduction of these vibratory frequencies on cancer cells, and you'll see the cells explode. They'll just start spewing their innards into the cellular medium. It's friggin' amazing. So I've been using that in addition to um, this information I found out last week about this new course of therapy that's being explored, where so when you do a CT scan or an MRI, often they do it with what they call contrast, okay, which is they basically inject this stuff into you that bonds really easily to cancer cells, right? So um, I found out from the technician on Monday, because I did in the last 5 minutes of the um, MRI, they injected me with this contrast, and I asked him how long does the contrast remain connected to the cancer cells, and he said 24 hours, and I was like, hallelujah, because I thought that I wouldn't have that much time. I thought I'd have only about 20 minutes or so, or maybe at the most 2 hours, because of of the other stuff they inject you when you do a CT scan. They inject you with this this radioactive substance that has a half life of 2 hours, and they have 2 hours to take the picture. Um, so, with that said, there's this new technology that where they discovered that the reason why they use this contrast is because it bonds really easily to cancer cells and lights them up, right? But what they also found is that if you vibrate those, there's certain frequencies of sound, ultrasound especially, that can vibrate the contrast connected to the cancer cells, and it'll vibrate so much that it'll actually vibrate the cell apart into pieces. Now, there's video of this as well online. You can look it up. I feel that within 2 or 3 years that may become a standard of care. Um, so in the meantime, I can't wait that long. I decided to try it out. So that's what I was doing all day yesterday, for 24 hours. Every couple of hours, I would sit with my phone vibrating at 100,000 hertz with a YouTube channel video that just plays that sound, that tone constantly for about an hour. And then with my iPad, I was vibrating at 300,000 hertz. And so the two different frequencies um, creates so much stress in the cell that the cell explodes. And um, so I just you know laid down and put those near my anus and hope for the best. And did that about 5 times in 24 hours, 5 or 6, maybe even longer. Um, so, like I said, everything is designed to put as much stress on these cells as I possibly can, and um, this the goal being to to make the most out of the next 9 or 10 weeks of the next 3 infusions, so that there's nothing left for the radiation people to do or the surgeons to do. That's my off ramp. That's what I'm hoping for. So um, either way, 9 weeks from now, after the third infusion, actually that'll be, I think it's 8 weeks from now. Um, this PIC line comes out of my arm, which will totally free me up in some really good ways. One, I won't have to go to stay in LA all the time and go to the hospital every week to have this dressing changed. Two, I can actually fully submerge in water. Um, and then after another um, 4 to 5 weeks, the toxicity levels that are in my system will have waned enough for this cold response thing to not be a factor anymore. And I'll be able to go into the ocean and experience cold air and drink cold water um, uh, for the first time since November. Um, so or December, the middle of December. December 14th is when we started this. So that's what's up with that. Um, I want to say something else. I've been wanting to say this, and I finally got the words in mind the other day of what to say. So I started restarted my GoFundMe campaign in October when I had a pretty good feeling that what was coming, because I knew I didn't have the resources to deal with it with just disability. Um, and at that time, what I was being told is that I needed to get into a really super hygienic environment and la la la. And I tried to get this place down in Venice, and long story short, that didn't really look like the best course of action. It looked like a tremendous waste of resources, actually, and it would have put me in hock because we didn't collect enough for the whole 6 to 8 months that they were projecting, and you had to commit to they only lease for 3, 6, and 9 months or longer, and the to date, or I should say, up until New Year's, we'd only collected in the GoFundMe thing less than $5,000, but overall, with Venmo and Zelle and PayPal and all that, altogether it was closer to about 10,000, and then since then altogether, I'd say we're probably around 13,000 overall. I've spent probably about 3,000 of that on maintaining, and luckily I've been able to stay healthy, stay hygienic through thus far with the PIC line. There have been no complaints from the nurses or anything like that. It's all good. Haven't had any issues. Doesn't hurt anymore, thank goodness. Um, but so here's my thinking. Um, we While it's wonderful what we've collected so far, it certainly wasn't enough to cover the whole 6 or 8 months. But I've I've held on to the majority, the lion's share of it, for contingencies. And here we are in the halfway through this infusion cycle. They're projecting that after this, I'm supposed to go through a month and a half of radiation treatments, and then followed by surgery. Now that surgery option, uh, it looks like this. They go in, they cut out a section of my colon, right? They completely sever it, top, bottom, right? And they reconnect that, right? But in the meantime, they put a stoma on the side of my thing, and I'm shitting into a bag until they say that it's all healed enough to take the stoma out, and then you go into another surgical situation where they reconnect your digestive tract to the colon, right? So it's actually two surgeries, and then you've got another recovery period after that. So the good thing is, I still have this chunk of change, and with what we've collected so far, I could get a place, and I would most likely have to get a place at least halfway through the radiation, and definitely through for the surgery. Um, Probably 2/3 of the way through the radiation. So you're looking at probably about at least 4 months. And right now I'm not. I think I've just got enough to cover. Um, to cover something like that if I had to. Um, but I feel the more I have, the more options I have is basically what it is. So I'm putting this out there to everybody to let you know, and to be as transparent as I can with those that have donated resources, material support, um, what it is that I'm doing with the money that you're sending. Primarily I'm maintaining the van, keeping it so that I can get around to these things, and using it to use food as medicine to get whatever I need to take take care of myself. physically, um, and and especially with regards to like supplements and whatnot. And that is going to increase as we go forward here because um, this middle section of this just the chemo itself is going to require a lot more supplementation to keep up my whole constitution because according to the last blood work that I had just before this last infusion last week, I am now officially immunocompromised in that my platelets and white blood cell count is now below normal. So I'm maintaining a distance from everybody and everything I can, and only medical professionals and cashiers see my face. Um, so uh, because the more immune compromised I am, the longer it takes for cuts and bruises and lesions to heal. So the more I can keep up my immune system to be able to heal things quicker, the quicker the lesion is gonna disappear. So um, so that's kind of the strategy at this point. Um, I'm gonna hold on to this nest egg in case it we have to go to plan B and C for the radiation and the surgery that they're projecting. My goal is to use what we're doing right now, this chemotherapy, the toxicity of it, to maximize it as much as I can to off ramp before we have to go into that, to leave nothing for the radiation or the surgeons to deal with. And um, and I know what they're going to say. They're going to say, well, you're a high risk. This specific cancer is at high risk of recurrence. So we will, in the abundance of caution, so we just want to go in there and cut it out, la 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 la. And I know from reading the statistics that even if they, I know from reading the statistics that even if they were due to do that surgery, the the chances of recurrence or the incidence of recurrence is it's a coin toss. It still can recur. You know, so I would rather not do the surgery, not do the radiation, and then, if possible, and hope to that some of these alternative therapies become more available in the next year and a half to 2 years, to kind of seal the deal. So that's my that's been my operating plan since I agreed to do the chemotherapy. And that's why I flipped it, because they wanted to start with radiation first. That's why I flipped it to the chemo first, because I was like, well, if that's an option, let's go that way, you know. And it almost they almost just didn't even mention that was an option. You know what I mean? I was like, excuse me, can you back up a minute? And so you're saying I have a choice here, you know? Well, here we are. Um, so that's everything pretty much, and I'll leave it there for now. If you have questions, email me or call me or whatever. Sit down for a sec. Wow, this is the second one of these. Excuse me, third one of these I've done today because the phone, the actual I was shooting a live for the Instagram crowd, and I got almost to the end of it, and the phone, the hospital called. So I had to take the call, and so then I had to shoot another one to finish it. But then you have to explain at the beginning. You have to do the whole thing all over again. So I did two of those over there, and I'm kind of talked out at this point. Um, but look at this. Pretty cool, huh? That's why I didn't get the apartment, so I could do this. Let's be here. So in the van, see the van? See the, see the van right there? In the van, where you see the window, my bed is right there, you know? So when, while I'm trying to process this chemo, I'm just lying there staring out at this all day long if I can. And feeling blessed, feeling blessed. So, um, so good news, but cautiously optimistic. I say cautiously because we are in no way out of the woods. We're not even to the edge of the woods yet. In fact, we can't even see the edge of the woods from here. You know, we know it's there somewhere, but you know, all this, you know, this could go anyway. And I say that because I have to be in reality here. And that's why I said that about the apartments and stuff. You know, you know, I have to plan for if things require me to do the plan B, C, D, E, F. You know what I mean? As best I can with the resources that I have. Um, and you know, honestly, uh, so over the weekend, you know, I did the infusion on Thursday. So Friday and Saturday and Sunday, no, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, I got a room at the. I used some of your resources to get a motel room to soak because I know that soaking really helps absorb the chemo better and just soothes the whole thing out. It really stimulates the vagus nerve, and you just chill out. You know, I do anyway, and so I had plenty of soaking sessions and everything. But in those first 48 hours, I didn't eat anything intentionally, partly because I couldn't, and partly because I wanted to stress the friggin' cancer cells as much as I could, right? Um, Unfortunately, what happened is peristalsis stopped. And that means, you know, your colon stops pushing stuff towards the bottom. But stuff collects at the bottom of the colon near the anus, right? And unfortunately, that collection point is where this lesion is. So it collected over the lesion, and then the longer you're not moving that, the more it starts to harden, right? So it hardened over the lesion, and so then when I started eating again after 48 hours, it it ripped the scab off the lesion, and I started bleeding again, and that, you know, totally bummed me out. But I knew what it was. I knew that I caused that, and so luckily, one of my friends provided me with some cannabis suppositories when we first started this thing, and I've been using them very sparingly because it's hard to figure out when you know, especially if you have diarrhea or something like that, like when do you put that in to have it be effective where you're not just going to poop it right back out, right? So um, luckily I had the suppository and I put it in there, and you know, it smoothed it all back out, but it didn't stop the bleeding. And I was really bumming out about it, and it just kept bleeding and bleeding for, you know, um, till at least yesterday. Uh, I didn't see any this morning, but that doesn't mean it's not there. Um, that said, I want to put a good spin on this. So during, unfortunately, having had cancer in 2020 and having gone through the, you know, the chemo and the radiation and all that kind of stuff, what happened, and this is important because the drug that I'm taking now is a platinum-based chemo that is very similar to the one that I had in 2020. And what the cisplatin that I had in 2020 did is it caused similar results. You know, the uh, uh, um, water was screwy. It was really challenging to drink water, stay hydrated. Um, but uh, one of the things that happened is that it caused a whole. Uh, Let me take a moment. Had a brain fog moment. This is what happens. This is the chemo thing. You forget your spot in the conversation. You get words the right way. You're looking at something. You know that it's a bird. You can't think of the word bird. You know. Um, so I've been gauging what my experience is against what happened in 2020 with that other drug. And what happened is that the cancer, because it was in the back of my mouth and in the throat, the cancer left through my saliva to the point where my saliva was toxic to me. Right? I couldn't swallow it. It would make me sick. Right? I think what's happening is that the dead cancer cells are actually leaving through the blood, through this issuance of blood through the stool. And one of the reasons why I think this is because of what I was doing with this sound therapy. When I first found out about this, 100,000 hertz to 300,000 hertz, if you create a binaural of that and you play it over, expose, cancer cells to it, it makes the cancer cells explode. Every time I tried that, using these pre-recorded clips on YouTube for 100,000 hertz and 300,000 hertz, playing one on my phone and one on my iPad and putting them next to my anus, within the next bowel movement would usually be a bloody stool, right? And that kind of weirded me out, so I'd stop doing it, And then this week I realized that it may be that this is how the cancer is leaving. So I'm going to go with that. And so once again, what we're aiming for here is to create a catastrophic, cascading collapse of the support system for these cancer cells. And what it looks like is right now is that this whole thing is kind of circling the drain very slowly, but it's circling the drain. And there's a tipping point where it all starts to implode. This is what happened the last time, and I expect it to happen this time as well. So unfortunately, there's nothing that we have no metric other than it being gone, and until the end of these infusions. There won't be any more tests until after they're done, and when we can do another CT or PET scan, or we'll probably do the whole battery actually, and they may actually do a colonoscopy to take an actual eyes on of that lesion, especially. So, like I said, I am looking forward to getting the PICC line out, and being able to get into water and drink cold water and soak normally, and start to get back to some level of normal life as a human being on Earth, instead of you know whatever this is. So, but remember, at every moment we are choosing life or death, and through our actions, thoughts, words, and deeds. So I'm choosing life right now, and I think humor is definitely choosing life. And this whole thing, when you look at it, is just so, talk about cosmic comedy, right? Craziness. I posted something yesterday that explains more about the sound therapy that I was doing yesterday. Um, but the day before that, I posted a picture. I was sitting here on the beach and I was watching the ocean, and there was this log that would have probably taken about 5 or 6 of us to lift it, right? And it was in the surf, getting tossed around like it was nothing, like it was a piece of lint or something, you know. And while the waves are looking like they're looking right now, you know, just beautiful. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I'm just the absurdity of the fact that here's the ocean just picking up this piece of wood that would have taken so many people to move, and it's tossing it around, and here I am, you know, trying to kill a handful of cancer cells, you know, and the absurdity of it all just, I found myself actually literally laughing and crying at the same time, you know. So that's what I mean by cosmic comedy. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for paying attention. Thanks for tuning in, and especially to those folks that are providing uh, all the thoughts and prayers and Reiki energy. I'm trying to figure out how to harness that shit uh, more than I have been, um, and and definitely those folks that have been providing material support um, in terms of ducats. Thank you so much. You've taken such a load off of my mind through all of this, to know that I could just walk into a store and get whatever the fuck it is that I feel that I need to, to take advantage of the moment. Um, because at this point, I said it before, I'll say it again and again, that food is medicine. I'm using food to counterbalance and to rebalance things. And so everything that I take in is calculated, to some end, you know, and everything that I'm not taking in is calculated to some end, you know. So, um, once again, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, thanks for paying attention. So here's my fun part, where I get to try to shove some love into the internet. Yeah, baby. Thank you. And remember, I love you.